Look, I know you've already achieved unheard of levels of success as an entrepreneur. So the real question is, while the world is radically shifting, how do we not get caught up in the chaos, but instead access our untapped capacity? You know what I'm talking about. I'm Katie Richardson, business coach to superstar entrepreneurs and host of What's Working Now. I'm here to show you how to unlock and magnify your untapped potential so that we can create the dream, live with purpose, and do what we are born to do. On this podcast, we are asking a different set of questions. Be present, be curious, be right now. Let's go. Hit that subscribe button and go to what'sworkingnow.com, drop in your email, join the waitlist so you never miss an episode of What's Working Now. And I'll see you on the inside. Hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am Katie with two exceptional entrepreneurs. If you have ever dreamed of being a speaker, you need to listen to today's podcast. There are many people out there who will tell you how to write your speech, what you need to share on stage, but almost nobody tells you how to actually get booked. Today, we're going to talk about lead generation specifically for speakers, and we have two exceptional entrepreneurs who are doing just this. Today, we've got Aaron Golub and Joe Johnston. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So excited to be here and so excited to have you both. And, you know, I want people to, let's start by focusing on Aaron for a second, because Aaron, you have a very unique story where you have literally gone out and done what most people would consider the impossible. And you're now taking that and helping people. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, so my quick background is I'm legally blind. And so for me, I have no vision at all in my right eye, completely blind. My left eye, I see out of a really small hole. I, grew up not being athletic, being picked last for every sport out there, not being confident, ended up finding football in 7th grade, started playing football. Sophomore year of high school, switched over to the position long snapping. Understood that, because of my limitation, my disability, that I had to put in 10 times the work than everyone else just to be as good as them. Found a way to essentially do the things that no one else was willing to do so I could get the results no one else was able to get. Worked my way to the point where I played football at Tulane University, becoming the first legally blind Division I athlete to play in a game, was named a team captain, went on to become an NFL free agent, and then went into the world of entrepreneurship and speaking.
Oh my word. Aaron, I'm trying to even just imagine watching a legally blind, incredible person. That's great that you have ambition, but how do you, seriously, how do you actually play football as a legally blind individual?
Yeah. Look, when I started playing football in 7th grade, I was an offensive and defensive lineman, and my coaches were just like, Aaron, hit the person in front of you in the other color jersey. And that works when you're 12 years old. Okay. But I switched to the position long snapping. And the thing about long snapping, for those of you that don't know, is I was the person on punts and field goals that would throw the ball between my legs to the punter or the holder, block the person in front of me. And It's so much muscle memory. It's like a golf swing. And so if you do it 10,000, 20,000 times, I could tell you in college, if I released the ball from my fingertips, would it hit the punter on the right hip, the left hip, the chest, the stomach, the head,
no way.
Exactly where it would go. And then I would just block the person in front of me. But I got really good at that one unique skill.
Wow. Which is such a good metaphor. You got really good at that one unique skill and you had it dialed, which is so cool. So cool. And it took a lot of that repetition. Okay. I want to keep going. And I want to also bring Joe into the conversation because you guys work together, which by the way, they have this incredible agency/coaching program called Initiate Connections. These guys know that it's one thing to learn how to speak on stage, but it's a whole nother thing to actually get booked and get gigs and actually build a speaking career. And this is what you guys have gotten really exceptional at. So Joe, what is it about your life and your experience that had you and Aaron really connecting and becoming partners in this business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to actually take y'all back, Katie, to my senior year of college, because that's where my love for speaking really started. I've
Okay.
always been like naturally a public speaker, and I liked presenting on stages and that sort of stuff in college throughout presentations. Senior year of college, I was a business major with a psychology minor. And my first class, my senior year of college, I had been doing a bunch of personal development, gone to therapy, doing work on myself, seeing like the
Wow.
benefits of that this work was having. Tuesday, 8:30 a.m., my first class my senior year, I was an abnormal psychology course. It's well known at my university, Dr. Richard Haljan. And from day one, I was hooked. Not only was Dr. Haljan an amazing presenter, but the content that was being pumped out there was like, this is like what I want to do. And so actually completely changed my major my senior year. Took like 12 psychology courses, first and second
Wow.
semester, and started going down this path. And in Dr. Haljan and seeing him on stage and his ability to captivate an audience and really take these deep subjects and topics, but make them tangible, really got me hooked on like, I want to do that. I was like, I want to be this guy. Like, he's such an amazing person. I formed an amazing relationship with him, started hanging out with him, actually started seeing him as my therapist. He kind of became a coach to me as I went down this path. Long story short, as I went down the psychology path, I realized, hey, this isn't necessarily what I want to do. I don't want to go back to school and spend 6-7 years getting my PhD and becoming a psychologist. But I got into the world of professional speaking. I got hit with an ad. I took an online course. My mind started to get open to like, a big fan of comedians. So I was listening to these comedians and I was like, I'm not funny, but I could probably craft a 45 to 60-minute speech and go out on the road and travel. And I always, Katie, had this vision of doing that alongside my friends, right? Like listening to comedians, some of my favorite, Bill Burr, Joe Rogan. I'd hear their stories of them being out on the road with other comedians that they were friends with. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so that's where the dream was kind of formed. Eventually, how that came to be is when I moved down here to Austin, Texas 2.5 years ago, as I was calling on a lot of these colleges and universities, I was finding that they needed speakers, but not always on the topics that I could speak on. So they didn't need maybe a mental health or personal development based speaker. They were looking for a leadership speaker, a sexual assault and alcohol awareness speaker. And long story short, it was like, hey, I was losing a lot of opportunities because I couldn't serve a purpose. And so I just slowly was like, hey, here's where I can fit in my friends. I started meeting a leadership coach. I met a great friend of mine now who has experience, unfortunately, with sexual assault, now does a lot of work on sexual assault awareness. And so that's where I grew the agency out. I met, individuals like Aaron. So now we represent, with MII Professional Speaking, my speaking agency, we represent about 18 expert speakers on a wide variety of topics, and we're able to serve the market at a higher level. And I think for me, Katie, what has come, and as sort of we were chatting about before the podcast, what I've realized is the dream for a while was Joe on stage. Joe, he's this cool guy, he's traveling, people will think it's cool, I'll get dates because I'm up on stage and all this stuff, right? Very egocentric, seriously, very egocentric, which I think some speakers do come into this game with. But what I realized, and what I've realized over time, is one, being on stage is about service, and two, for me, I get as much satisfaction of booking someone like Aaron to a stage that he's a better fit for, and shooting him a text, hey man, I just got you an X dollar gig for this date, are you in? I get as much satisfaction and fulfillment out of that, maybe even more, than I do winning gigs for myself and going out and speaking. And so it's really been, more about empowering others and helping them get on stages and get their unique messages and stories out to the world that can solve problems for others. And I just find deep fulfillment in that and satisfaction. And as we've sort of chatted about, there's a deep need in the market for it. And so we're just continuing to scale out and help. I still go out and speak once, twice a month, but also empowering the individuals like Aaron who have these unique stories, can solve different problems than I can solve, and putting them on the right stages. That's really been fulfilling for me.
Which is so cool, because if you're going to hire somebody to coach you through something, you need them to also be living that journey as well in a lot of ways. And so you can really tactically help them navigate that landscape. And we should bring Aaron back into the conversation. Joe, that's amazing. It's really incredible to hear that story and to hear how your purpose has evolved over time. And, first it was girls. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's evolved into like really wanting to see other people get their message out there into the world, which is really incredible. So Aaron, you talked about getting really, really good at this one skill. How did you take that ability to hone your skill and bring it to the speaking world? How did you even get into speaking?
Yeah. So after college, I went into both the world of finance and the world of entrepreneurship. I started working at really large financial firms, and very quickly learned that I absolutely hated it. It wasn't for me. I didn't like that lifestyle. It wasn't the right thing. But I didn't know what else to do. So I kept working there at the beginning and was building a business as a speaker on the side because I had this experience in high school and college when I was asked to speak, all of that. And so in the beginning, I was working, ridiculous hours because I had a normal finance job, which is a lot of work to begin with. And then also building, business as a speaker. Eventually, when I, grew my speaking business, I left, finance, but I probably could have, or really should have left finance a lot earlier. And, for me, it was, I didn't know how to get out and get booked. I didn't even know if I was good in the beginning. So for me, it was, how do I get in front of these companies, these places, and do it for free or do it for $500 in the beginning and learn to do it slowly. But I think a lot of speakers, a lot of people who want to get into speaking have this idea that you just need an agent, you just need a bureau, and you're all set and you'll get booked solid. Whereas that's not true. For me, I learned, how do I get in touch with the right people, get my message, get my story across them, get the problems that I can solve across them, and get it to the position where they will book me because I do the outreach. Because the same concept of, if you teach someone to fish, they'll eat for the rest of their life. If you give a man a fish, then he'll eat one meal. But I taught myself to fish. I taught myself lead generation, cold email, cold outreach at a very large scale. I had a lot of people help me along the way, and I got really good at it. And it's the same thing as long snapping. I got really good at that unique skill of cold outreach and lead generation. And that allowed me to essentially get myself booked to the point where now I don't want to speak as much as I was, because that was ridiculous. But that kind of led into, me and Joe and our partnership.
So good. So good. Something that really stood out to me when I first met you guys is you've talked about how there are other coaching programs out there that really focus on the message and the 30, 45 minutes that you're on stage and what are you sharing and, what's kind of the book that you're going to sell alongside that. And people would go spend all this money and go through these programs, come out with a great presentation, and no stages to stand on. And you guys felt like that's not okay. That's not okay to teach somebody something that's just going to be a dead end. And so you guys have developed your own process and system that you've experienced yourselves, right? You figured it out through the school of hard knocks, how to create those leads and get yourself booked. I don't want you to have to give away everything, but what are some things that people are doing wrong when it comes to trying to get on stages and trying to build their speaker career? What are some things they're doing wrong?
Aaron, you want to speak to that first?
Yeah, I can start. And so, the way we break it down whenever we work with a speaker is really 5 buckets: clarity, marketing, lead gen, sales, growth, and scale. And I think the areas that people do wrong are within marketing, their marketing materials represent them as a low fee speaker, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just that they haven't been taught how to present themselves as a high fee speaker. People oftentimes present themselves as a motivational or inspirational speaker as well, which again, that's not the worst thing in the world. That's what I did in the beginning. But if you want to get to the point where you're making $10, $15, $20, $30,000 a speech, you need to be a professional keynote speaker where you're going in, you're actually solving problems, not just going in to motivate someone for an hour. The next thing is lead generation, and Joe, I'll give it to you when we come to sales in a second, because that's kind of your side of it. But with the lead generation side, it's look, I hear from people all the time, I email 5 people a day and I'm never hearing back. I'm cool. I'm emailing 1,000 people a day and I get booked. Let's scale that to a point. You don't need to be where I'm at for that. Across both of our businesses, I think we email close to 2,000 a day to get leads in the door. One part of it's for my speaking stuff. Part of it's for
2,000 a day. Sorry,
but it's a numbers game, and that's not all of it. It doesn't need to just be that. But people don't understand that. Look, if you're sending out 5 messages a day, you're not going to get results. If we can get you to 300 or 400 a day, that's a great place where I guarantee you will be getting booked if we're sending out 300 to 400 messages a day.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, Katie. So a couple of things that I'll go on. One is main client acquisition source, right? You ask any speaker, aspiring speaker, even some really established speakers, hey man, what's your main source of client acquisition? And they usually can't give you a good answer. And we all know as entrepreneurs, business owners, that's not a good foundation to build a business on, right? And that was the first problem Aaron and I needed to solve, and that we solved in quarter 1 of this year is hey, when we partner together, it's hey, before we look at sales, we need calls on the calendar. We need leads on the calendar, and we need to do that, get that to the point where that's pretty hands off. And now we have that. I mean, we booked 20 calls the past 7 days with basically
with this consulting business right now. We're at the place where we book like 60 calls a month. Now, I want to get that to be booking like 100 calls a month. Like 60 a month is really good if you're closing at, what the rate we're closing at.
Right. Yeah. And that's the same thing in speaking, right? You need to get before you even looking at gigs, like the marketing, we're looking at that clarity for sure. It's like, you need to get on the phone with meeting planners. We even tell our clients this. It's like, look, sell before you build. Like, you can go and build an amazing talk, and like these programs have you do. If you then go to the market and actually start talking to people and they say, hey, cool, but we're not looking for that. Like, you just wasted all that time. Like the market is going to determine what we're able to sell and the fee that we're able to sell it at. Right. And so that's our big thing. It's like, go to market. Like, we want our clients in market, like get clarity, get marketing. By day 30, we're like, you should be doing outreach every day and just talking to people. Even if you're not closing a deal, talk to them, hear what the market is actually demanding and commanding right now, so that you can build your offer around that. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think for a lot of speakers, especially those higher up, Katie, it's ego. It really is ego, right? And what I mean by that is, there are a lot of speakers that, and Aaron kind of alluded to this, have gotten paid $10K to be on stage, but there's no consistency to it. So it's come from inbound, or it's come from referrals or word of mouth, which we say is fantastic. But the issue is, because they've gotten $10K, because they're, a PhD and they have all this experience, they think that they don't want to be a beginner again. And truthfully, if you're getting into speaking, oftentimes you kind of have to be humble to be a beginner again, right? You don't have to start, at the beginning like I did or Aaron did, but it's like, we'll talk to some speakers that, hey, I've gotten 10K before. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But over a year, like I've talked to people, I'm like, look, man, I am way less experienced than you. I have way less expertise than you, but I'm getting booked and paid more than you. And at the end of the year, I'm making more revenue from you in speaking. Why is that? It's not because I'm smarter than you. It's probably not because I'm a better speaker than you. It's not because I have, more extensive experience. It's because I have a system that works. And so that's the biggest thing, I think, for a lot of these speakers. They've gotten a taste of it from referrals, word of mouth. But then when we're like, hey, you have to actually outreach to people, 20 people on LinkedIn a day, and then let's start sending out hundreds of emails automated on email a day. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. I'll just get an agent. It's like, okay, fine. But then people like us who are willing to do the work, and my clients who maybe are less experienced than you and less expertise, are going to be getting those gigs that you're not getting, right? And so I think those are the two main things. Marketing's important. Obviously, being very, very good on stage is very important. But we come from the belief that if you don't have any gigs, and particularly you don't have any calls on the calendar, doesn't matter. You could be the best speaker in the world, the best marketer in the world. You're not going to get booked and paid. And
one last thing on that before we kind of move on is like the other issue with just like the agent model is like, if you get an agent to represent you, they, they're going to find these events, if you're even a good fit, first off, that are actually looking for a speaker. However, like, I can't tell you how often I get in touch with a company. They had no plan on having an event, but they love the message I'm getting across, and they just create an event for me. Like, companies have budgets for this stuff, like whether it's virtual or in person, like every single month, I probably have a company that just doesn't have an event plan, but like they want me to come in and speak. And so they just create it. So like you can make that happen.
I love this. So I loved these talking points that you had, Joe, you were talking about actually talking to people. I started my business from scratch, from zero. And that's how I started selling product, as I was literally walking in stores and talking to people. And the same was true as I shifted to coaching. Like, you have to start engaging with people. And so often people want it to be a different answer, that I need a funnel and I need ads. And like, you're not ready for that. You need to go talk to people and find out why they even would potentially want to hire you. What needs do they have? And there's something special and magic in that conversation that happens. And so I love that you acknowledge that and acknowledge the value of that. And it's not the easy answer. And then also addressing the ego. And, something that really stood out to me as you and I, as the three of us had our first conversation, you mentioned that sometimes people get really hyped and excited about having a speaking career and don't understand the business of being a speaker, and honestly start to realize, I think, that they don't want that. And you've alluded to some people, right? It's not just stages and the fanfare and the glamour that happens in that moment. There's a whole business behind that is required if you want those moments of being on stage and want that moment of glory.
it's a very attractive career path and way to make money and a living from the outside. And I think this can be true for a lot of things. When you get on the inside, it's not as glamorous, you know.
It's grueling.
Look, it is grueling. And like,
Yeah.
look, I still love it. And Aaron, I know, loves it as well. And there's, you know, I can't see myself at this point in my life being in, you know, other industries or having a different job or business. But like, look, like it's still, you know, Aaron and I have talked about this. It's like, hey, getting on stage and getting paid 5, 10, 15K is fantastic. But what you don't see is leaving your family or friends on a Tuesday, staying in a random hotel in the middle of nowhere, often on a Tuesday night, speaking Wednesday, flying back, having a delayed flight, you know, your layover gets missed, and then you're back Thursday night and you're exhausted. And so, you know, Friday you're catching up on sleep, right? And, you know, if you have a family, if you have kids, if you like, that's 2, 3, 4 days, sure, you make good money off of it. But it's not as glamorous, I think, on the inside as it looked from the outside. Speaking is great, being on stage, but everything that goes behind it, and then we don't even have to get into all the back and forth and negotiating we did to actually get that deal done, right? It's like, look, and I tell people all the time, it's like speaking 45, 60 minutes, everyone wants to do that. What separates those that do that consistently is the ones that do the other things on the back end to actually make that happen, because that's the difficult part.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm curious to hear from either one of you. You know, you talked about systems that work and having that system in place. Is there also anything like a snowball effect that can start to happen where you're on enough stages that you start to become known? And how long does it take to get to that point where it's not as grueling and you're known enough that you're getting enough inbound requests? I'm just curious. Is there a tipping point for a speaker?
You know, look, I'll kind of take that. I think yes and no. I'd say like, look, like, do I get more inbound requests this year than last, and last year than the year before? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, like, I always do cold outreach because I think that is the best way to actually get in front of new people. You know, I think you can build a brand, you can build yourself up, but at the end of the day, like, it's a short way of saying like, yeah, you know, look, you can, but unless you are like a top speaker in the world, unless you are literally like, unless you're a Gary Vee or a John Gordon or a David Meltzer or someone like you're not getting that all the time. Like and I'll just use like David as an example. I'm very close with him. He's a mentor and a friend of mine. Like he gets inbound requests all the time, but like his fee is insane. I mean, he's worth that value. Don't get me wrong, but it's very high. And he's just a different level. Now, my goal is to be there down the road of his level of entrepreneurship, but like he's scaled businesses to degrees that like I'm just nowhere near yet. And so like my story's cool, but at the same time, like, yeah, I get inbound requests, but I'm still doing lead generation every day. And going back to what Joe said earlier of like the ego of like the amount of people we talk to that have gotten booked once or twice or 3 times at 10 or 15K and just have an ego being like, oh, people should just come to me. I'm worth that. It's ridiculous. Like I get booked at that all the time. Like I still pound the pavement every single day.
I love this.
I can speak quickly as well. It's slightly different for me, Katie, with the agency model. And what I mean by that is a decent amount of my business now does come from repeat clients. And truthfully, I see the path to longer term scale is like, that's why the agents and bureaus are good, because we have outstanding relationships, right? And because I have 18 different speakers that I represent, Joe can go out and speak on mental health. Well, if they have another event 2 months later, but they don't want a mental health speaker, great, let's look at one of our other speakers, right? Even a big deal that we're running that I've let Aaron know about, like there's a company that is looking for, I think like 11 or 12, like a virtual speaker series. So they're looking for like 11 or 12 virtual speakers. That's amazing for a client, like for an agent like me who has 18 speakers in their roster. We can run up, you know, let's say a 50K deal and get 6 of those speaker slots. We serve them, our speakers get on stage, everyone gets paid, the audience gets what they need. And so it's a great relationship. So it's slightly different from an agent and bureau perspective where I do retain clients. But to Aaron's point, particularly as just like a one-off speaker, as someone who's just trying to speak and get yourself, and that's your main, when it comes to speaking, your main source of revenue, you can go and crush it at a conference, an annual association conference, get paid 20, 25K. It doesn't matter how good you are. they're just going to get another speaker next year and probably won't bring you back for another 4 or 5 years, right? So to Aaron's point, it's a volume game. It is a volume game. Obviously, there's different ways where if you wanted to get into consulting, hey, you give a 15K keynote and then you run a 50K consulting deal on the back end with companies, which some of our clients will do with their different areas of expertise. But when it comes to speaking, it's a volume game, and it's always a volume game. And to Aaron's point, I'm scaling out my lead gen all the time. Again, I have those top clients that will give me repeat business, but I want to go get more of those. And that's why we're continuing to run outbound to serve those people.
Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. And if you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardsson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. Okay, volume game. I get it. I'm going to let it in this time. Aaron, you talked about cold outreach, and no matter what your business is, anybody would benefit from having that level of outreach. What are some things that you have done because cold outreach oftentimes doesn't get responded to. So your messages that do get engagement and get response, what are some themes that you see amongst that? Like what are some effective tools?
And look, like there's different forms of cold outreach, whether it be email, LinkedIn, cold calling, other forms of social media. My favorite is email because that's what you can scale significantly. And you just need to know how to pull the right levers. And so when I look at cold email, it's like, it's both an art and a science. There's a science to it of like how you set up things to, and what softwares, what tools you use to A, try and avoid spam filters, and B, have really good deliverability. So like there is a science to that. But the art is like, how are you crafting it? The amount of people who just write like a 5-paragraph cold email and I'm just like, you just threw up on the page, who's going to respond to this is ridiculous. Like the simplest thing in the world, and people think it's ridiculous, is like, if you don't know what to write as a subject line, make your subject line quick question. You think it's ridiculous, but people respond to it. And have like your email should be under like 70 words at most, because if it's short and sweet, people will actually read it and respond to it. And that's really important. Like I send out emails sometimes that will leave one line. Hey, do you ever look to bring in speakers for your events? Best Aaron, send. Like
so good.
It's there's an art and a science to it, and it's about adapting. It's about like, in the follow-up messages, maybe it's sending some case studies, other stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like there's so much more to it. Like you're not supposed to use certain links in your emails that will set spam triggers, but also like understanding like, if you're doing cold outreach, you need to have unsubscribe links in there. You need to have there's a lot to it, which like we walk and work with all of our clients through. But like the point is, it's not that easy to just be like, I'm going to go send 500 emails at scale every single day. There's like it takes you time to learn. I know more about cold email than anyone ever should. Like it's absurd. But I also know that it brings me in business.
Yeah, which is so smart. How are you finding these email addresses? Are you buying lists? Are you looking through LinkedIn? How are you finding people's to cold email?
Yeah. So none of it is manual. It's all like pretty large scale. So some of it is like using different softwares that we can get lists at scale. Some of it is tools that we can scrape LinkedIn with or scrape other places, but it's, using tools to get emails at scale and then running them through what we call a cleaning process, because you don't want to send a lot of emails that are going to bounce, for example. And then once they're clean, then you plug them into, the sending tools.
This is so good. So good. I mean, that makes so much sense. And it's so brilliant at the same time.
We should add that process, because there is, and I tell everyone on the front end, as when I'm on sales calls, it's like, look, there is a little bit of manual work that needs to be done on a daily basis of going and getting the work and putting it into a campaign. But you can also, if you have a VA or an assistant, like it's pretty easy to outsource, right? Like they're $5 an hour tasks of go find the leads with this criteria, export them, plug them in here, then run the campaign, and then manage the inbox and just put calls on my calendar. I think the other thing that Aaron and I are both super proud of is like in both of our businesses with this consulting offer, And now with both of our speaking businesses, like we don't really touch lead generation like at all. Like Aaron doesn't really touch lead generation at all. Like he's pretty much out of it in his speaking business. I'm pretty much out of it in my speaking business. And it's like, I'll give an example, Katie, right? Like last week, I like to go on runs at like 2:30 Central Time, went on a run, came back, looked at my Slack channel. I had 3 calls booked on my calendar from my VA, who goes and outreaches to people, right? And so it's like, you're starting to build this machine. Aaron and I are even slowly getting to the point where both of our businesses were removing ourselves from sales, right? And I think this is another point and goes down another alleyway is like, the other value that Aaron and I provide to the market is like, look, I love speaking, but at the end of the day, like, I see myself as a business owner and entrepreneur. And the issue with most speakers is they're just that. They're just speakers. They're not business owners and they don't have a business sense and they're doing everything inside of their business. And even if they're making good money, like they don't understand systems. They don't understand processes. They don't understand automation. They don't understand hiring team. And the thing that Aaron and I, even with some of our newer speakers that we're always trying to drill into their mindset is like, you've got to be thinking about leverage. You've got to be thinking about how to buy your time back so that ultimately you can do the things that you want in your business. If you just want to be on sales calls, closing deals and speaking on stage, you can do that, but you have to start thinking like a business owner. And I think that's something that the speaking market needs a lot. There's a lot of really good speakers and creatives and artists, but are you a business owner? That's what's going to allow you to scale to where you want to be and get on more stages and stay in your zone of genius.
So good. So good. I have a couple sort of tactical questions, like for this individual who is growing their speaking business, ideally, who's negotiating their contracts?
Themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. And look, like that can change over time. But like as a speaker in the beginning, if you are doing the outreach and you're taking sales calls, you're negotiating them. Now, I'm actually in the process of, I have someone coming on in my business now that I'm training up as a sales rep to take sales calls for me. And honestly, like I want to be so removed from sales because I'm really good as like, and I hate saying this term because I can't stand it, but without knowing a better term to say is like a visionary CEO entrepreneur. Like that's just what I'm good at, of understanding like the big picture. But then like, I really like getting in the weeds of like building out systems of lead gen. That's just fun for me. But like, I want to be removed from the sales process as soon as possible. So like Joe and I have had extensive conversations about like the second that certain levers are pulled within our consulting business, like he truthfully will probably come in and do all my negotiating for my speaking because he enjoys that. And I'd rather run other parts of the business.
Yeah. It's an interesting landscape because the entrepreneur is probably going to be the best salesperson of your whole team. At least that was my experience in my physical products company. I could sell my products better than anybody else. And I still hired sales reps and agents. But at the same time, there's like this positioning component. Like if you're in having that conversation, they already have access to you right now, right? Because they're in that conversation with the sales call. And so is that a net negative to be in that conversation yourself?
Yes and no. I can see where you're coming from. And truthfully, like, that's why at this point I'm removing myself from sales because I want to be that like, look, if this is a serious deal, then Aaron will come in. And I'm at the point where I can do that. But in the beginning, like, unless you're willing to really pay someone consistently, like you just don't have the resources to do so. And I used to not have the resources to do that. So like, I 100% get what you're saying, but at the same time, like, I don't think that a newer speaker should think that way. And I also think that like, you're going to be able to negotiate, like the amount of people that I've had sales calls with that like just genuinely appreciate me being on the call and being the one who's talking to them, just love it. It's insane. Now I'm at the point where I can't do that every day anymore, but people really do appreciate that. And I think you close at a higher rate.
Yeah. And I think like to add to that, Katie, like, look, I think we can all understand from a business owner perspective, like Aaron and I are realizing like our time is actually not best spent on sales calls, doing lead generation, all that stuff. And so like you want to get yourself out of it eventually, but it's also like, I'm of the belief, like, I don't want to remove myself from anything in my business until one, I have pretty much mastered it or gotten it up to KPI. And I really understand the process and the process is tight, right? So for example, in our consulting offer, we're in the process where by the end of this quarter, Joe is taking 10% of closing calls, maybe, and our team is taking 90 to 95%, and Joe is basically out of sales and just overseeing it. Now, in order to get to that point, Joe had to spend pretty much a year at this point mastering the sales process, understanding what works, knowing how to sell this offer, getting us up to a solid enough KPI where now, and I was talking to my sales rep this morning, I'm like, look, man, I understand this process now, and so I feel comfortable slowly starting to have you take more of those closing calls. And it's the same thing in speaking. Part of the reason why I'm going to take some of Aaron's calls is like, I want to really master the sales process and selling high fee speakers. And then I'm going to slowly start removing it in Aaron's business and in my agency business. Right. But until we've mastered that process ourselves, or at least gotten ourselves up to a solid enough KPI, I'm of the belief that it doesn't make sense for you to remove yourself from that. And again, it goes back to the point, you can't remove yourself from sales if you don't have enough sales calls on your calendar. So lead generation has to be dialed first, where you're getting enough reps. And if you were to bring a sales rep in, like we brought in a sales rep before our lead gen was dialed in our consulting, and we had to let him go because we're like, dude, we don't have the lead flow. Like it's not a sales process at this point. We just don't have the lead flow. So get the lead flow right first, then you can put a sales rep in, or master the process, the sales process first, then you can put a sales rep in. That's why Aaron's able to do that. He has the lead flow in his speaking business where he's like, it doesn't make sense. I'm just going to start training someone and then master that process.
Yeah.
One more point there is like, it's also understanding what you like and what you don't like. And truthfully, like I'm good at the sales process, but I just don't enjoy it that much. I don't like being on calls all day. It's not like I am most valuable when I have 3 or 4 hours of blank space and I can just build things. That's when my time is the best spent. And so because of that, and because I don't enjoy the sales process much, I'm replacing myself from that. Now I'm mostly out of lead gen, as Joe said. However, like I'm the one who goes in and builds certain systems of it because I'm good at it and I like it. I will probably never be removed from that because that's something I enjoy doing. And so I think that we find like, what are the pieces in the business you like and where do you want to be removed? And like the pieces I like I'm always probably going to do.
I think that's such great advice. Yes, in the speaker world and when somebody's building a speaking business, but I think also just any entrepreneur, the whole objective is in the beginning, you have to wear many hats and you have to do the non-glamorous things and the things that drain you and that are not exciting because you're building a business and you're creating the systems. And as the business grows, the whole objective would be to delegate, eliminate the things that are not exciting you, that are not giving you life, that don't light you up, and to outsource those things. So more and more you're spending your time doing the things that you love, that you're passionate about, that like fill your energy and don't drain you. So that makes a lot of sense.
Optimize, systemize, automate, delegate. That's kind of how I think about things. And continue optimizing. We're always optimizing, right? But
and then repeat.
That's it.
So since you guys are so immersed in the speaking world, I mean, I've been going to events. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years. I would say I started going to like events, non-trade show events, I would say like 10 years ago. And like, I've been around speaking both as an audience member and on stages. I'm curious. I mean, you guys are younger than me, so maybe you haven't been in the speaking world that long, but I'm curious if you're seeing any trends when it comes to what's on stage. I know, Joe, you talked about how like you have to really be solving a real problem for people, and that's what people are looking for. Are there any trends that you guys are seeing as far as the messages that are being shared and what people are drawn and actually hiring speakers for?
Yeah, I can speak to topics a little bit, and then Aaron, I'll throw it to you. Leadership is huge, always has been, always will be. That was like one of the first lessons I learned. Like if you're a leadership speaker and you're a really good leadership speaker, like you'll always speak, and we find that to be true. Mental health is obviously that's a little more up my alley, but this is becoming really huge. I'd say 50% of the clients that we're talking to on a daily basis, like mental health is coming up. Corporate, college, university, some associations as well. Just a lot of people burnt out, stressed. And I think overall, this has been a problem for a couple of years, but people and organizations are starting now to pay attention to it. Another big one is DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really big across organizations and, different clients that we talk to. Those are kind of like the three main ones. Obviously, you're going to see things like change management, sales performance, right? You can look at these sales kickoffs that a lot of big organizations will have, looking for a big, sales-based speaker. Aaron can kind of speak more to some of the corporate stuff when it comes to topics. I'd say those are the three big ones I see: leadership, mental health, and like general wellness, and then.
Yeah. No, I agree with Joe there. I'd say also like overcoming adversity and resilience is another big one. I think and I alluded to this a little earlier, or maybe Joe did, I can't remember, but one of the biggest mistakes I see speakers make, and truthfully, like in the beginning, it's fine. It's something I did. is being a motivational speaker. Like it is, because you're going to be capped out at a certain amount of fees, and like you're not going in and actually solving a problem. The best speakers solve problems while they're at an event. They're a professional speaker and consultant that solves problems through their speech. And when you go in as a motivational speaker, you go in and you motivate for 30, 60, 90 minutes, and then you leave and nothing changed. My goal when I go into an event is like, I'm doing a needs assessment beforehand. I'm understanding what the needs of the organization or event are. I'm making sure that I hit on that and make sure I create change, because I want two things to happen. A, to impact people in the room, and then to walk away being not only inspired, but impacted. But then 6 months down the road, I want them to be doing something and say, wow, what Aaron talked about really allowed us to do X, Y, Z and see ABC result. And like, that is what a good speaker does, not go in and just motivate for 30 minutes.
That makes a lot of sense that you're doing this assessment ahead of time. I think it's really important to know who you're talking to and what are the obstacles that they're running into. How do you do an assessment before going on stage?
Yeah, so it's a simple conversation. It's a Zoom call like this, and I'll typically record it so we don't have to take notes during it, and I can just be present there. But it's understanding whether it's for a consulting deal that I'm running, a workshop, a speaking engagement. It's understanding like, A, who's the audience and what they're what they're like, but B, like I want to understand like what the challenges. Let's just say it's corporate as an organization that they're going through. What are the adversities that people have been having from all levels, new hires to C-suite? I want to understand what those challenges are. I want to understand what their goals for the organization are, not only in a month from now, but in 6, 12, 18 months down the road. And then my job is to take that information and mold my speech to help bridge the gap between the challenges and the goals. And if I can help bridge the gap, I can help them solve that problem. And then I actually did my job. If I walk away from a speech and people are motivated, but then forget about the next week, I didn't do a good job as a speaker and it wasn't successful.
This is something that I have noticed from the beginning, both with you, Aaron, and Joe. It's not enough to say flowery words and make people feel good in a moment. Like you guys your intention is to actually help people get a real outcome and genuinely solve problems. And I really appreciate that. To me, that says that you have intentional values in your life and that you set up systems, processes, teams to support you in delivering on those values. And I think it's so important, especially in a day where people are hawking their services online through a fancy ad on Facebook and pulling people in and selling great packages, big packages, but then not delivering on their promises. And I think it's so special and exceptional to meet somebody like you who it's all about the result and the outcome and making sure that you set your day, your week, your team up in a way that supports you in doing that. And I think what is interesting to me is your name. The name of the company is called Initiate Connections. And I would guess that there's some real thinking behind that name and why your company is called that. How did you come upon that name and what you do?
So I'll start off that because 2022 is a very interesting year for me, I'd say, where I was speaking a lot, I was traveling a lot. Joe started this program, this consulting, originally without me. I was doing it with some one-on-one clients. He was doing more of a group model. And then we blended them together where we have kind of group and one-on-one mixed together. And when he was doing it, he called it the Speakeasy program. And, that's what we call like our modules, our learning management system now, but now we call it Initiate Connection. So I essentially in early 2022 started a company I was using that name, Initiate Connections, and it was related to the speaking industry, but it was a different type of company. Long story short, in that time period, I learned probably 15 years of business lessons in the span of 6 months. I got in bad partnerships. I got screwed out of time. Thankfully, didn't get screwed out of money, but got screwed out of a lot of time and effort. And long story short, at the end of that, I took a step back and was focusing just on my stuff because, that I still kind of owned that domain and everything to do with, that name and all of that. When Joe and I really partnered together, we were like, why don't we take this? It would be a perfect fit to, help people, as you were alluding to, learn to initiate their own connections or however you want to put it. And so we took that and used it as the company name and then made the Speakeasy program the learning management system that we use within it.
Yeah.
And I want to speak real quick, Katie, just a little bit of what you spoke about before, just super quick. I think a lot of people in the speaking coaching training space, they sell the dream and they market the dream. And look, Aaron and I have been, talking about our marketing and sales and like, I think it's because like speaking is very attractive to a lot of people, and it is like a dream thing, right? Like you can get sold on that really easily, and like we could come with our marketing and our sales in that approach. We try not to, right? We try to become very, very blunt of like, look, like it is amazing. It is an amazing lifestyle, and I would be lying to you if I said it isn't incredibly difficult. And truthfully, like we've even been talking, it's like it's not for everyone. Like there are certain clients that are ICA. It's like you have to have a deep passion, you have to have a deep desire, and you have to want to make this your mission and your purpose and do this, because if you don't have that, you're going to quit. You're going to fall off within month 2 of the program, because it is hard and it is difficult and there is a lot of rejection. And so I think it's really important for us. One of the core values I know I hold, fairly confident that Aaron holds, is like just honesty, straightforwardness. And like we're both very blunt. We're both from Massachusetts. We tell it how it is, to our detriment at times. But it's like, look, like I'm not going to sit here and BS you and tell you this is easy and you're going to make 6 figures in your first year in speaking. Can you make that eventually? Can you be very successful and live that dream? 100%. And we're going to give you the raw truth of how this game works. And that's how we kind of go about things. And I think that's really, really important to both of us.
Yeah. It's great to hear from both of you how you kind of went in this direction and how you landed on Initiate Connections. And I think the reason it's really resonating with me is, I started my business 18 years ago, and very quickly I was thrown into sales and marketing. And I came from a design background. I didn't know business. I didn't know sales and marketing, but I ended up being a great negotiator and really great at sales. And it's because my objection was problem solving and genuinely connecting with people. And it turns out that's a really great sales strategy. And so I love that that's the focus with you guys, is these connections. It's not to say that there's some promise that those 300 emails are all going to get returned. They won't all get returned, but we're just trying to connect. And we're initiating that connection. I think it's so brilliant. And I think, yes, we need sales. Yes, we need marketing in our business. But when the business becomes about that, then we lose sight of the greater purpose. We lose sight of the deeper intention to serve people and to genuinely help and support them. And I think it's just so cool that you're helping people create sales systems. That's like a big part of what you're doing. And yet the focus is on connecting. And I think it's like, of course, like as I get to know you guys, of course, it makes so much sense. But I think it's so easy for people to get lost in the need to grow their business. Yes, you need to have sales. Yes, you need to have profit. And the road to that is genuinely serving people. And I see that it just shines so bright from both of you as we talk, and it's really inspiring. And so I want to invite everybody who's listening, like sometimes you can, especially when sales are down, you can get caught in this trap of like being ultra sales focused, and then your business becomes transactional. And that's a dangerous place to be in. All of a sudden, now you're not separated from your competitors because your competitors are all transactional. And so what you guys have built is really purpose-driven. It's based on values, and it's based on genuinely getting people an incredible outcome. And I'm sure you are actively working to grow and build your business, and you have sales and marketing strategies to do that. But to see that your highest aim is to get people this outcome and to help them make connections, I think is super inspiring.
Sell and serve from the heart. It's one of our main core values, Katie. And like, again, I to come back from a tactical perspective too, one of the things that allows you to be more abundant on sales calls and sell and serve from the heart is when you have 50 other calls on the calendar because your lead gen systems are dialed. I say this all the time. Yeah. I say this in the training. It's like, look, if you have one deal on the calendar for the month and that falls through, like you're going to be freaking out. And if you're relying on that to pay some of your rent or your bills, you're going to be freaking out. If you have 10 calls on the calendar and one person ghosts, you're going to be a little less rattled. If you have 50 and you have a system that's bringing in another 5 every day, like we've been able to do in our businesses, like you'll be okay. The key to consistent revenue is consistent lead generation. I can't say that enough as a business owner. Like it's deals in the pipeline, and it starts with calls on the calendar. Like, and me and Aaron talk about this. Like, man, if I have calls on the calendar, I'm okay. Like, I'm not anxious. I'm not worried because I know it just becomes a numbers game at that point where we'll find a certain percentage of those people are a perfect fit. They're financially qualified. It's the right time, and we'll hit our sales numbers. and we'll do it in a place where we're serving the right people. If you don't have those calls on the calendar, and trust me, I've been there in my life, and you need that money to pay your rent or to cover your overhead, like you're going to be freaking out. And then you're going to come from that place of scarcity and make deals and sell people that aren't the right fit. So it all starts there in so many different ways. And that allows us to sell and serve from the heart in an abundant manner, which is what we want to do and can differentiate you from a lot of those competitors, like you mentioned.
So good. So good. You didn't have anything. I was waiting for you, Aaron, to see if you had something that you wanted to add.
I completely agree with Joe and everything he said there. Look, it's our goal is just to help others and help them get out there more. And, we know we can do that, and we have done that. And it's about coming from that place of abundance. There's nothing I can add to that. That would change. I 100% agree with Joe's point.
Well, you guys have brought tremendous value just in this short 45-minute conversation. I really appreciate your abundance in sharing the different systems and processes that have both worked for you each individually and as well as your customers and clients. And I think if anybody is seriously considering any sort of a speaking career, these are the guys to go work with. And there's a lot of people out there, and there's people who will take charge and take a lot of your money and won't necessarily help you build the business. And that's what I've been so inspired by with you guys, is you know how to create the systems and processes that support you in building that business, which is just essential. And to your point, it doesn't matter how wonderful your message is. If you're not getting on stages, then nobody's hearing it.
And Katie, I just want to speak to that really quickly, because this is something that really fires me and Aaron up, because part of the reason why Aaron and I partnered is because we saw some of the other programs in the space. We had invested in other programs and we got value from them. But I mean, Aaron had a light bulb moment of like, dude, if we partnered, we could build the best program at the space. And we know that that's like, we're well on the trajectory to do that. And we've had clients who come to us, have been through other programs, other well-marketed, top-known programs, have paid way more than they have for us. And they're like, man, I've got more value in 30 to 60 days. And I'm not saying that to tout. I'm saying that because be careful with who you spend your money with. And I'm just very passionate about this because people can sell the dream, and it's a very emotionally compelling thing that I'm going to make you a full-time speaker. Ask them to show you your client results. Ask them how much they're actually speaking. You know what I mean? Like one of the things I say in our sales calls, like, look, I have a 6-figure speaking agency, and Aaron does, I won't say his numbers, but he does very well for himself as a speaker. We are speakers. We are in this game. We're in it every day, and we have client results. Like, we have pictures. We have all of our clients. You can talk to them. We know that we're helping people. Yes. And so I would just say, as people are vetting other programs, just ask those questions and do your work before you, because it is an emotional buy, before you spend that money. Because it kills me when people come to us and they're like, man, I dropped this amount of money and I did not learn tangible skills to get that ROI back. And it's part of the reason why we're so passionate about getting this out there to the right people. And
to add to that, like, that goes for any business out there. There's way too, there's a small amount of consultants, coaches, however you want to call it, that are really good at what they do. There's way too many fake coaches, fake gurus, fake consultants online that just BS you and take your money and give no results. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves in the world. And that's why I have a really negative connotation with the word coach. I hate it. I will never call myself a coach. I am a consultant, because I am a belief that is just, it's just a different thing, in my opinion. Now that's a whole nother story and whatever, that's for another time. But I think there's way too many BS coaches, whatever, out there. And we're building a true consulting business, helping you along the way grow and scale your business. And whether you work with us or you work with anyone else, you're not even a speaker and you're looking for someone to help you scale your business, just do your vetting properly. Make sure you work with the right people, not only that can actually help you, but are genuine and like their goal is to help you and not just make money on you.
So good. The website is initiateconnections.com. Go look these guys up. It's Aaron Golub, Joe Johnston. They're the real deal. They're both living this, and they're consulting through their programs. They're showing you their systems. They're helping you actually create leads and get booked on stages. This is incredible. And like building the business of speaking. Joe and Aaron, thank you. This has been absolutely incredible. And for everybody who's listening, this is what's working now. Hey, thanks for listening. I am sitting here so curious to know, what is your greatest takeaway from today's episode? We talked about a lot of things, and my hope is something in particular is really popping up for you. And if you heard my message in the middle of today's episode and you're wondering, hey, Katie, how can you help me get more done in the next 90 days than most people do all year? I'm going to invite you to go to that website, now.katierichardson.com/case study. I have 8 incredible VIP clients who have been so generous to share their stories of the problems that they were facing when they first met me and what they have been able to do because of the formulas, the systems, the processes that I have taught them as they have learned this art of showing up powerfully in their business. So go find the entrepreneur who's most like you, who's going to inspire you to see new possibility. And if you so feel inclined, I'm going to invite you to go to the next page where you're going to see a 6-minute video and I show you the secret behind the work that I'm doing with these incredible entrepreneurs. It might surprise you. So go watch that video. And then if you feel so inclined, fill out an application because you and I will hop on the phone and we'll have one of the most impactful conversations you have potentially ever had in your life. I've had a client say, Katie, that call was priceless. And I was like, cool. Can you at least name a price? And he said, at least it was worth $10,000. So you have an opportunity to qualify for that if you fill out an application and if you qualify and meet the minimum requirements. And please, by all means, keep listening. I'll see you in the next episode and keep being awesome.